Welcome to a place where love isn't just a word, it's a journey. Here, stories unfold with all their raw truths, the choices we make for wealth and security, the hidden flames of passion that awaken when we least expect, the aching conflict between riches and real intimacy, and the ultimate surrender to a love so powerful it outweighs any fortune. Every story told here is not just about romance, but about the heart's deepest struggles, the clash between desire and duty, the search for closeness in a world of appearances, and the moments when true love finally wins. If you believe love has the power to transform, to heal, to burn brighter than gold, then you are in the right place. Stay with us and let these stories remind you that the greatest treasure is not wealth, but love itself. The house was filled with quiet elegance, a silence that carried the weight of choices made long before the heart had truly been consulted. The marriage came not from the trembling hands of passion, but from the cool certainty of security. There had been no fire in the beginning, only the soft glow of chandeliers reflecting on polished floors, the rustle of silk dresses, the gentle hum of a life promised to be free of hunger, worry, or uncertainty. It was a marriage of convenience, a choice wrapped in luxury, bound with the golden ties of wealth. The man was older, his years etched in the lines around his eyes, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had built an empire from stone and steel. His hand, when it rested on mine, was steady, sure, but it never sent sparks through the skin. It was not unpleasant, but it was never the kind of touch that left the heart racing. He gave everything that could be measured, a grand home with tall windows, servants who answered before the bell finished ringing, a wardrobe full of gowns soft enough to feel like clouds. Each gift was another reminder that the world outside could never harm me. And yet, with every sparkling jewel, there grew a quiet ache, something unspoken, something money could never buy. Nights stretched long within the marble walls. There was always a feast on the table, wine poured into crystal, music floating from distant rooms. But even in the midst of all that splendor, a kind of loneliness wrapped itself around the body. It was not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being unseen. Every smile offered to me was polished, rehearsed, the smile of a man proud of his possession, proud of the life he had secured for me. He thought comfort would be enough, that stability could be mistaken for love. Perhaps in his way it was love, but it was never the kind that pressed close in the night, whispering warmth against the skin. The days passed in a rhythm of predictability. Morning walks through gardens trimmed to perfection, conversations that rarely strayed beyond business or polite affection, the sound of his laughter more measured than spontaneous. At times, I tried to convince myself this was enough, that safety was more valuable than fleeting passion, that the hunger for touch could be silenced by silk sheets and diamond rings. But the heart is stubborn. It does not care for logic or security. It beats for something real, something raw, something that no contract or fortune could guarantee. There were moments, small and fleeting, when the truth became unbearable. Watching couples on the street, their hands intertwined, their eyes burning with something fierce and tender all at once, I would feel the hollow space inside grow wider. Their love was unguarded, reckless even, but alive, and I, draped in pearls and wrapped in velvet, carried a hollowness that no amount of wealth could fill. The smile painted on my lips each evening became a mask, hiding the quiet truth that the soul longed for fire, not marble floors. He treated me with respect always, never harsh, never cruel, but never tender either. His affection was practical, as though love was a transaction, loyalty in exchange for security, companionship in exchange for luxury. He believed that providing everything I could ever need was the purest form of devotion. Perhaps he truly believed it was love, and perhaps that belief made it even more difficult to face the emptiness that grew inside, because gratitude was expected, and gratitude was always given. But love cannot be bought or forced into existence. It must bloom, wild and unplanned, like ivy crawling where it chooses, not where it is planted. The world admired the life. Friends and strangers envied the gowns, the jewels, the carriages, the effortless elegance of it all. From the outside, it looked like perfection, and in truth, it was perfection of a certain kind, orderly, secure, polished. But love cannot survive in perfection alone. Love needs warmth, vulnerability, the rush of blood when fingers brush unexpectedly, the way laughter escapes without planning. Love needs chaos, and there was no chaos in that house of wealth. There was only stillness. At night, lying beneath heavy blankets, I would sometimes close my eyes and imagine a different hand resting against mine, not steady but trembling with the same longing I felt. I would imagine words spoken not in the tone of ownership, but in the raw honesty of desire. I would imagine a love so unshaped, so unrefined, that it left me breathless. Those thoughts became my secret, my quiet rebellion against the life chosen for me. For even in the grandest rooms, with the finest things, a heart starved of intimacy beats with the hunger of a beggar. Still, I remained, because security is powerful, and fear of the unknown stronger than the ache of longing. Walking away from wealth meant stepping into uncertainty, into the risk of loss, hunger, or struggle. And so the bargain continued, comfort in place of passion, riches in place of love. Every day, the face in the mirror reminded me of the price paid for stability. The jewels glimmered, the gowns shimmered, but none of them could quiet the storm within. It is strange how a life can look complete while feeling so unfinished, how two people can share the same roof, the same bed, yet remain oceans apart. He gave me everything except the one thing that mattered most, the feeling of being truly loved, deeply, wildly, endlessly. And in the silence of those long nights, when the world outside slept, the truth whispered louder than any promise of wealth. And so, though the marriage began as a convenience, the heart knew it was only the beginning of a much longer journey, one that would test whether love could ever be silenced, or whether it would one day break free, unstoppable, unashamed, undeniable. That was the true cost of marrying for wealth, gaining everything that glitters, yet longing still for the fire that burns unseen. It came without warning, like the strike of a match in a room that had long been cold. At first, it was nothing more than a glance, a moment that could have been forgotten. Yet that glance carried something unspoken, something that lingered long after the eyes had turned away. It was dangerous, foolish even, but the heart does not measure risks the way the mind does. It simply responds, trembling in recognition when it encounters a flame it has been waiting for all along. He was not supposed to matter. Life had already been shaped into lines of duty and wealth, carved into the marble of security. Everything seemed perfect, at least in the eyes of the world, but perfection is often silent, and silence can be suffocating. The first time his presence filled the air, the silence cracked. There was warmth where there had been none, tenderness where there had only been routine. The connection grew slowly, though every moment felt like it moved too quickly. Small words exchanged became conversations that lasted in the mind long after they ended. A smile shared across a room became the memory that carried through the night. The air seemed different when he was near, charged, alive, as though something long asleep inside had finally awakened. It was not just attraction. It was recognition, as though the soul had found a mirror after years of searching. Every touch, however slight, burned with meaning. A hand brushing past in the smallest of ways left a mark far deeper than intended. The warmth of his arm near mine was enough to make the world blur at the edges. It was in these tiny, forbidden moments that closeness began to bloom. Delicate, dangerous, yet more real than anything that wealth or stability had ever offered. With him, there was no pretense, no careful roles to play. There was only the undeniable truth of two hearts reaching toward one another. The fear of it made every step heavier, but the desire made every step unavoidable. There were nights spent questioning how something so dangerous could feel so right. There were mornings spent convincing myself to forget, only to find the memory of him more vivid than ever. The heart argued with the mind pleaded with the soul, but the pull remained unbroken. It was in his eyes that everything was revealed. They carried a softness that melted defenses I did not know I had. When he looked, it felt as if nothing else existed. no duty, no wealth, no expectation, only the raw truth of being seen. That gaze held the promise of a different kind of life, one built not on gold but on closeness, tenderness, desire. It was a promise too dangerous to speak, yet too powerful to ignore. The first time his hand lingered on mine, it was as if the world shattered and rebuilt itself in a single breath. It was not just skin against skin, it was the collision of every unspoken word, every secret longing. That touch carried more than desire. It carried the possibility of love, real and unguarded, the kind that grows not from convenience but from need. A need so deep it could not be silenced. The days that followed were filled with stolen glances and secret thoughts. Every encounter, no matter how brief, became a treasure locked within memory. Even in silence, his presence was felt, like a fire burning steadily, unseen yet unstoppable. And though every moment was shadowed by the risk of discovery, the fear only made the connection more intense. It was as though love itself was testing the boundaries of what could be endured, daring the heart to surrender despite the danger. There were moments when guilt struck hard, when the weight of vows and choices pressed heavily against the heart. Yet even then, the memory of his voice, his laughter, the way he said my name, would dissolve the guilt into longing. Because the truth was undeniable, what existed with him was something no wealth could buy, no security could replace. It was not a choice made for survival or stability. It was a flame that burned because it was meant to. With him, even silence felt full. Sitting together without a word spoke louder than any promise I had ever been given. There was comfort in his nearness, a peace that came not from riches, but from knowing that, for once, the heart had been heard. It was in the way his hand would rest near mine, not claiming, not demanding, but offering. It was in the way his presence made the world softer, brighter, more alive. The more the connection deepened, the clearer the truth became. Love does not ask for permission. It does not wait for the right time, the right circumstances. It arrives when it will, reckless and relentless, daring everything in its path. That is what he became, the flame I never sought, but could not resist. A flame that warmed even as it threatened to consume. It was forbidden, yes, but it was also real. And in a life filled with everything except authenticity, reality became the most precious gift. His touch, his smile, his gaze, these became the proof that love still existed, that desire could still awaken even in a heart long silenced. And so the flame burned quietly, dangerously, beautifully, a reminder that closeness cannot be bought, that tenderness cannot be commanded, that love, when it arrives, is unstoppable. That was the moment I knew life would never again be the same. The weight of wealth is not carried in gold, jewels, but in the silence that surrounds them. There is a certain loneliness in marble halls, a hollowness in the echo of footsteps across polished floors. The world sees the perfection, the luxury, the ease of a life secured by riches, but it does not see the quiet ache that lingers beneath the surface. To everyone else, the life appears enviable. To live without need, to dine without worry, to wear beauty as if it were skin. What more could be desired? Yet desire is not silenced by comfort. Desire waits, hungry, restless, until the smallest spark of intimacy feels more valuable than the finest treasure locked away in gilded rooms. There was always abundance, tables filled with delicacies, gowns sewn from the most delicate silks, jewels that caught the light in every movement. But abundance does not touch the soul. It decorates the body while leaving the heart untouched. And so every glittering gift, every heavy necklace placed around my throat, became a reminder that I had everything except what I longed for most. Wealth provided stability, yet the nights remained cold. Wealth built walls against hunger and hardship, but it built no bridge to closeness. The heart, unfulfilled, sought moments wherever it could find them. A glance across a room, stolen quickly, became a lifeline. The brush of a hand, unplanned, carried more sweetness than the fortune stacked within the walls of the house. A whisper spoken in secrecy became more valuable than the jewels displayed openly. Each small act of tenderness carried the weight of a fortune, because it was rare, because it was real. The heart learned to treasure what others would dismiss as ordinary, a smile, a touch, the quiet nearness of another's presence, because those small things were the only truths in a life built on illusions. The conflict lived inside me, sharp and relentless. Gratitude for the life I had chosen waged war with the hunger for something more. Was it not enough to live without fear of loss, without the shadow of poverty? Was safety not worth the sacrifice of passion? These were the questions that circled endlessly, yet none of them silenced the way my chest tightened at the sound of his voice, the way my body leaned instinctively toward him, the way my soul felt lighter in his presence than it ever had surrounded by riches. It was in the smallest of moments that the conflict revealed itself most clearly. A diamond ring glimmered on my finger, heavy and cold, while the warmth of his hand lingered on my skin long after it had gone. A grand carriage carried me through the city, yet it was the memory of walking beside him, unnoticed, that made my steps feel alive. I dined on delicacies that kings would envy, but it was the taste of laughter shared in secrecy that left me truly nourished. Every gift of wealth reminded me of what I lacked. Every secret moment of intimacy reminded me of what I truly needed. The danger of it all only deepened the longing, to want what cannot be spoken aloud, to crave what cannot be claimed. Such desire burns hotter than any flame. Every look held too long became a risk, every touch a betrayal of the life I was supposed to uphold. Yet the more forbidden it became, the more precious it felt. The body trembled not just from longing, but from fear, and in that trembling was the proof of being alive. For what is life if lived without feeling? What is love if traded away for comfort? At times, guilt pressed so heavily it felt unbearable. The wealth around me seemed to accuse, as if every golden surface reflected not beauty but betrayal. And yet, even in the grip of guilt, the thought of him remained. The sound of his laughter, the softness in his eyes, the unspoken promise in every glance. They rose above the weight of obligation. Guilt could silence words, but it could not silence the heart. The truth became impossible to ignore. Wealth provides comfort, but comfort does not stir the soul. Wealth can fill a house, but it cannot fill an embrace. Wealth can buy loyalty, but not love. The conflict was never between right and wrong, but between two kinds of life, one gilded and safe, the other raw and uncertain, but filled with the intimacy that wealth could never provide. Every moment with him felt like stepping out of shadow into light. Even when it was brief, even when it was stolen, it was real. That reality became more valuable than every treasure combined. To be touched not as a possession, but as a soul. To be seen not as part of a contract, but as a person. Those moments were priceless. They were the true gold, hidden within the folds of secrecy, shining brighter than the jewels displayed for the world to see and sow. The days continued, the life divided between what was displayed and what was hidden. By day the role was played with grace, the perfect image of wealth and stability. By night, or in fleeting moments stolen from the watchful eyes of duty, the truth breathed in stolen glances, quiet words, and trembling hands. The conflict remained unresolved, yet the choice became clearer with every passing day. For in the shadow of riches, it was never the wealth that gave life meaning. It was love, fragile and forbidden, that made the heart beat with purpose. That was when I understood that no gold could ever equal the weight of a single, genuine touch. There comes a moment when the weight of pretending becomes heavier than the weight of truth. For so long, life had been lived behind walls of wealth, hidden beneath layers of silk and jewels, each smile carefully placed, each gesture measured to match the role chosen. It was a life without cracks, polished and safe, admired by others, envied even. Yet beneath it all, the heart beat restlessly, starved for something that could not be bought. The flame that began as a whisper had grown into something undeniable. At first it was a secret, tucked away in the corners of stolen glances. pressed into the silence of unspoken words. But secrets do not remain silent forever. They grow, they demand, they fill the spaces where emptiness once lived. What had begun as forbidden tenderness had become the only truth that mattered. And in that truth, the choice became clearer with every passing day. The warmth found in his presence was unlike anything wealth had ever offered. Riches gave comfort, but comfort is cold compared to passion. Jewels glimmered in the light, but no jewel could match the brightness in his eyes when they found mine. Gold weighed heavy, but the weight of his hand against my skin felt like freedom. It was in those moments of surrender, when I let myself fall into the closeness, that I understood. Nothing in this world was more precious than love. The decision was not simple. To walk away from the life built of wealth was to step into uncertainty, to risk everything known for something fragile, something untamed. Fear whispered of loss, of regret, of the dangers of choosing love over security. But the heart cannot be silenced by fear. Each time his voice lingered in memory, each time his touch burned against my skin, fear lost its power. For what is a life lived in safety if the soul remains unsatisfied? What is stability if the heart withers in silence? The world may never understand. To others, the choice would seem foolish. Who abandons riches for passion, who trades security for warmth, but they do not feel what I feel. They do not know the fire that rises when his lips touch mine, the trembling joy that fills me when laughter escapes freely between us, unmeasured and unguarded. They do not know the peace that comes in his embrace, the kind of peace that no amount of wealth could ever build. It is not foolishness, it is truth. The hardest part was not choosing him, but admitting that the life before him was never truly mine. It was borrowed, lived for appearances, carried like a costume that glittered but never fit. Every choice made in pursuit of wealth had been a bargain struck against my own heart. And though it gave me everything the world could see, it took away everything unseen. To admit that was painful, but it was also freeing. For the first time, I understood what it meant to live honestly, even if that honesty came with loss. There were nights spent in tears, torn between two lives. On one side, the security of fortune, the pride of being admired, the certainty of never wanting for anything material. On the other, the fragile but unshakable reality of love, the risk of heartbreak, the possibility of struggle, but also the promise of passion, intimacy, and truth. And when the tears dried, the answer was always the same. Wealth could build walls around me, but love could give me wings. The surrender did not feel like defeat. It felt like awakening. To lean into his arms without hesitation, to let his presence be enough, to allow myself to want nothing more than the sound of his voice and the warmth of his touch. That was freedom. That was treasure. For the first time, I was not counting what I owned, but what I felt, and what I felt was everything. There is power in letting go, in laying down the heavy chains of expectation and choosing what the heart demands. I had been taught to believe that fortune was the greatest prize, that security was worth any sacrifice. But love proved otherwise. Love revealed that the greatest wealth lies in closeness, in laughter shared at midnight, in the softness of whispered promises, in the way two souls can find each other and never want to let go. And so the choice was made. Not in a single moment, but in many small ones, each one pulling me closer to the truth. Every time I turned away from Jules to find more joy in his smile, every time I chose the warmth of his presence over the cold beauty of luxury, the decision became clearer. Until finally there was no conflict left, only surrender, and in that surrender I found myself. Passion, warmth, and truth, these are the treasures that last. They do not fade with age, they do not break with time, they do not lose their value in the eyes of love. And once felt, they can never be forgotten. That was the moment I understood that the greatest fortune is not counted in gold, but in the beating of two hearts as one thank you for joining this journey into the depths of love, passion, and truth. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the next chapter here. Every story is a reminder that love, no matter how forbidden, fragile, or risky, remains the greatest treasure of all. Until next time, keep believing in the power of true love.